Good morning, Julia. How are you?
Hi, I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well. It is nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Thank you for being willing to come on my show.
Oh, absolutely. Any chance to talk about books and sign me up, I'm there.
Yeah, I'm still just so shocked and horrified that, that you've been propositioned by other people who want you to pay to like be on their shows or help
Yeah.
promote things. That I just don't get that.
The most common one is, can I review your book? Oh, of course you can. That would be wonderful. Oh, yes, I'm going to charge you $70.
Right. Right,
And
because they have to read it, or they read it before they give you a very bland 5-star review, right?
and usually misspelt. Yes.
Yes, right. The characters are very believable, right? Yeah, I've seen some of those. Apparently, from what I've heard from other indie author friends of mine, apparently you can buy these kinds of reviews from Amazon, like in mass. Like someone will give you 10,000 reviews or likes or something like that on your Amazon account. You pay them like $1,000 or something, and then magically 10,000 people will have bought your book and make it look like a bestseller. You know,
Yeah, and
all
Amazon
these
won't tumble to that, obviously. They won't sort of look at your account and think, where have all these reviews come from? And not a single one is verified. Hmm.
right. Yes, exactly. Yeah, I even feel like when I've done book shows and people sometimes will buy the books and then they'll want a review. And I appreciate that they want to do that. But I'm always leery, like, okay, I know they bought this book because I recognize the person's name. Is Amazon going to think that I'm just, this is a scam? But I've got so few reviews. I thought, oh, okay, I'm not worried about it. It's okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
Amazon are very funny. They've got some weird rules going on there. I
Yeah.
personally think that, if your great auntie Mabel has paid money and bought your book, she should be allowed to review it.
Right.
I,
What?
I really don't get this. And I've had a lot of my reviews lately have been marked as being unverified, even though I've paid for the book. I bought the book and bought it, read it, reviewed it. But somehow they've realized that this person is following me on Instagram or on Facebook or somewhere like that. And so they say, no, you must be friends. Well, I'm following Stephen King on Facebook. It doesn't mean that that we're mates.
Right.
So
Well, we can
I think
invite
they
him
need to,
on. Hey, Mr. King, Julia is following you. Come on, let's get with it.
yes, we're friends. So come and follow me.
Obviously, right. That's fantastic. Um, yeah, I don't understand. That's kind of one reason why I wanted to do this show in a way was because I've met so many wonderful people through Instagram, and I'm so admire the variety of people's passion, the genres in which they write, and the numbers of books that they put out. And I wanted to just I wanted to meet them and talk with them like I am right now, and just hear about them, what they want to do, how they do what they do, and give them a showcase, a platform to talk about. Because I don't believe that there should be any competition. I'm not in competition with anybody. I'm just doing my thing, and there's enough room at the top of the hill for everybody to plant their flag. And it's like,
Everybody's different. Yeah, everybody is different. We all write different ways. We all write different types of books.
yeah.
Like you said, there's plenty of room for everybody. And I was actually, funnily enough, having this conversation with someone on Instagram literally 5 minutes before I came on here. And they were saying how some authors had felt pressured to actually cancel their book publication because of bullying from other authors. And I was so shocked at this because I had no idea this sort of thing went on. And I was just trying to get my head around the concept. And I kept saying, but why? Why would anybody do that? And she
Yeah.
said, well, they're jealous.
I,
It's just down to pure spite and jealousy.
I think it's jealousy. One of my friends is going through that. She's just like 19 and she's just getting ready to publish her second book. And I think because she's young and she's pretty, that she's a threat to, you know, other people. I'm wondering, because she's also involved in other kind of male dominated or genre fandoms like Godzilla and things like that. And so I think it's great. Hey, this is you've been a fan since childhood. All of us have in our group. And so I not having been on the other side of that bullying, I don't understand it. I just don't understand why people would be bullying about someone who's doing something creative. So I mean, we've been friends for a while, and now I'm her editor, and it's like because her other editor was kind of screwing her, like completely screwing her over. So I formatted 2 of her books because her editor was just garbage, and like I think sabotaging her stuff because she was threatened by her. She's a better writer than her editor was. I go, why are you even paying this person money because you're better than her? Why, but there seems to be these kind of small, very narcissistic circles um, of fandom around certain writers who create those kind of groups of sycophants.
Mm.
And then anyone who kind of comes in as an outsider or who threatens that, they just kind of gang up on them. And
It is like being back at school. It is.
yeah,
It took me right back to school with the groups of the mean girls, the popular girls. And if a new girl joined the class and she was sort of pretty and looked nice, then the others would just rip her to shreds. So she
yeah,
wasn't a threat. And it just, I'll grow up, people.
I know.
Just grow up.
Yeah, and it's like I just don't get it. I'm just like, what? It doesn't make any sense to me. I have other friends who are writers and some who are very prolific and others not so. I also have made a couple movies. 2 of my posters are behind me. They're schlocky, like B movies, cheesy comedies. And I have friends in the other people who make movies, but we're all pals and we all support one another. It's like, we ask each other to review our movies or books. Like, can you read this and give me a review? I'm like, yeah, sure. And it's all supportive. I mean, we don't do the same thing, but we're friends. And like, yeah, we should be encouraging one another. We should be supporting one another in this endeavor, and
Well,
no matter
it's
what.
it's as they say, lighting somebody else's candle does not diminish your own light. It's so true. You can help. I mean, when I first became an indie author, oh goodness me, 5 years ago now, I had no clue. I was literally greener than a Brussels sprout. I had no idea how to do anything. I was just
I was
naive.
just swallowing at the wrong time. I'm like, oh God, I'm going to spray all over the camera. That's great. Okay, sorry.
So I mean, I joined and I didn't know that there were so-called rules that I was supposed to be following. I mean, one of the big rules is that if you're a multi-genre author, you have to write in different pen names. Do you really? Because
That's
I
funny.
don't.
No, I don't either.
No,
Yeah, I'm a
I'm
multi-genre
up to
author,
about
so I get it.
I'm
I
about up to 8 genres now, and no signs of
Oh,
stopping.
hi, good for you. That's like one of the things I wanted to talk about. I haven't met too many other multi-genre authors. That's one of the things that made me want to talk with you.
Yeah.
Um, and I think this is all being recorded. I'll probably keep most of it, because
Okay.
we're already talking about things. But I'll do the official intro in just a second. But that was one of the things too, because people were asking, like, "Are you going to change your name?" I'm like, "Why? I'm here to
Yeah,
celebrate
I
me,
like that.
Mark
I like
Justice.
that.
I did this. I
Yeah.
want me out there."
Also, I'm a bit ditzy. I have trouble remembering one name, my own name. And if I had like a name for every single genre, I'd be up to 8 names. I'm
Yeah,
sorry. I'm sorry.
yeah,
That's split personality time. I would get
right.
very
Yes,
confused.
you start to feel like Sybil,
Yeah,
after a while.
yeah, I would be. Like,
A table
it's
for
Monday.
8.
Who am I today?
Exactly. Right. Well, let me get the official introduction out of the way, and we will continue this lovely conversation.
Okay.
Um, hey, this is Mark Justice, and welcome back to Between the Lines. Today we have multi-genre writer Julia Blake, all the way from England. Julia, welcome to Between the Lines.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me. It's great to be here.
And just officially, so everyone knows, no money is being exchanged in this,
No,
right?
no, no,
Exactly.
no money.
Yes.
Sadly, no money.
Yeah, I know, right? Actually, an author friend of mine last night chimed in and said, you should like charge people to do book reviews. I'm like, why? That just sounds so much work. I'm like, no, I don't have time to read. And then, I'm nobody. Like, why, I'm just doing my thing. Like, I'm just happy. I got enough going on. I got enough
Yeah.
going on.
I don't charge for book reviews either. I buy, read, and review one indie book a week, and I don't charge because it just wouldn't sit right with me. And
Yeah.
also, if Amazon discover that an author is actually paid for a review, they will pull the review and possibly even block you from selling your books through Amazon. It's just
Wow. that I did not know that. That's a good thing I don't
Yeah.
have money to pay for reviews. Wow, an indie book a week. That's amazing. That is incredible to be able to read a book a week. That's wow.
Sometimes it's a short story. Sometimes if I'm
Yeah.
running out of time, a very good friend of mine on there, she writes wonderful little short stories. And sometimes if it gets to Thursday, because I always post my review on a Friday, but under the Indie Feature Friday tag. And sometimes it'll get to Thursday lunchtime and I'll think, oh, I'm not going to finish this book in time. I know I'm not. So I'll quickly go on and I'll download a short story from Net Shorts on Instagram, and I'll read that in my lunch break and then I'll review it next day. So it just buys me a little bit extra time.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Well, I got a lot of questions for you, and I'll just start. I like to start with something kind of big picture and just kind of broad before we get into the details of your specific writing. So who are some of your favorite writers?
Um, that that's the question I always dread answering, because
Oh, okay.
there are so many. There are so
Well,
many amazing
should we
authors
should we
out there.
limit it to maybe like some of your like earliest? Because my next question, and this
Yeah.
used to be, I used to
Okay.
ask it differently. It was like growing up, who were some of
Okay.
your
Yeah.
favorite writers or some of your favorite books? Because
Okay.
sometimes
Well,
I
when I
don't
was a
remember the writer, but I remember the book. Like when I was a
yeah.
7, I'll remember, oh yeah, I read Runaway Ralph, but I couldn't remember the author's name, you know?
Well, I think when I was a child, my very first fantasy book that I either had read to me or read to myself was The Magic Faraway Tree by Enid Blyton. Now, she's one of the most prolific British children's writers ever. She invented Noddy, she invented the famous Five. I mean, all of those books she invented. But The Magic Faraway Tree was, like I said, my first taste of fantasy. And I've had people say to me, oh, The Magic Faraway Tree is not a fantasy book. I'm sorry. 4 children go into a forest where there are talking animals. They climb up a tree and find it's a portal at the top that takes them to different worlds. How is that not a
That
fantasy?
sounds like fantasy to
That's
me.
fantasy.
Yeah.
Fantasy. It just really gave me a love of the whole sense of not only escaping into a book, but escaping from this world, going to other worlds and discovering other realms and other possibilities. And so I really remember that. In fact, I still have my original book, The Magic Faraway Tree. Then growing up, a little bit more obviously, C.S. Lewis, Narnia. If there's a fantasy author who has not read Narnia, then they seriously need to go and do that now, because he was YA before YA was even a thing. He created fantasy for children. He really did. And I think the strength of Narnia kind of has lived on through, what is it now, 60 years since
Something
it was
like that.
published?
It was in the,
Something
was
like
it
that.
in the 40s? Was it the 40s or 50s?
I think it was pre-war, pre-Second World War. Yeah, I think so.
So
So
yeah,
yeah,
now we're looking at 80 years.
80
Yeah.
years. And
Wow.
it's still
Yeah.
as fresh and as vivid as ever. So
And he injected
definitely,
a lot of his Christian beliefs into it. He wove
yeah,
those into the tapestry of the mythos.
yeah,
Yeah.
which you can take or leave according to how you feel. And I
Right.
must admit, when I was a child, that aspect of it probably just went straight over my head.
Sure.
I just remember being in absolute tears because Aslan was dead, and then, oh my goodness, he's come back to life and it's marvelous. I just remember that excitement and that heart beating thrill of going to Narnia. And I read the books over and over and over again and just wanted to go to Narnia. I wanted
Did
to
you keep
so
on
badly.
opening your closet and trying to step
Yes,
in and go
yes,
through?
opening the wardrobe. Is there some snow? No, there isn't. Oh,
Oh, I just hit a wall. Why are these clothes in the
no.
way?
And
Did you?
anytime when we used to take the bus, I used to take the bus to school, and we used to go past this old ruins of a monastery. And behind some trees, there was sort of like a half door, wooden door set halfway up. And in my head, behind that door, if you opened it at the right time and in the right way, there was Narnia. So that it kind of was part of my everyday life.
That's
Then
nice.
growing up a bit further, I guess maybe the fabulous fantasy series The Dark is Rising by Susan Cooper, and the books by Alan Garner, so The Weird Stone of Brislingham. They kind of instilled a love of British myth and folklore.
Okay.
So, yeah,
Like like
Wayland the
like the way
Smith.
Tolkien did. Are you were you a Tolkien
Yes,
fan as well?
yeah.
Okay.
Um, okay, I've got to make a confession here. I've never read Lord of the Rings. Don't hate me.
Oh, I'm
Sorry.
sorry. Time is up, Julia. I've got to go.
I
um,
have read The Hobbit. I've read The
okay,
Hobbit.
The Hobbit's a good place. Yeah, The Hobbit's wildly
And I've
different.
seen all the films several times.
Okay, that's good enough. No, it's funny. because I was waiting for the follow-up when you said you can't call yourself a fantasy writer if you haven't read Narnia. And I was thinking, oh, what about Lord of the Rings? Because that's also a book that a lot of fantasy writers say this is what started my love for that genre. Now, I've only heard the first book of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, because it was read to us like when I was in third grade, and I wasn't a fan. I'm still not a fan. It's
No.
like, no, it's just like talking lions, and I'm also an apostate, so I just don't care about C.S. Lewis's theology, and like, eh. And it's something that I maybe one day will go back to, but it was just something like Harry Potter. There's just nothing in there that sparks anything that's intriguing. I've seen some of the movies, and because other people I know like them, so they're playing, and I sit there and it's there. But no, I totally get it. But see, Lord of the Rings I read when I was 16, along with other really seminal books for me, like Dune, and the Elric series, Elric Michael Moorcock, the Elric series, and Robert E. Howard's Conan series, and so those books are still, that doesn't mean they're without flaws. I mean, the Two Towers is just boring. I mean, just oh my god, can we do something with this? They're just talking and walking and
Well, funny story about Lord of the Rings. Several years ago, I actually went to see the musical in London's West End. And we're going back, it must be about 16 years ago, 15, 16 years ago I went. And I went with a friend, and I read The Hobbit, but I'd never read Lord of the Rings. She was the other way around. She'd read Lord of the Rings. She'd never seen The Hobbit, never read The Hobbit. And we were both on the bus journey to go up to London. We were both, is it just the first book that we're going to see? Or is it all three books? Because the stage show apparently was a minimum, was a sort of 2.5 hours long. And we were both confused as to how are they going to fit all of these books into 2.5 hours with songs. How are they going to do that? And the way they did it was they just didn't bother with the Two Towers at all.
Okay. Yeah. I agree, because there's not much happens.
Oh no, they just had a lot of fog swirl about on the stage, and all these sort of hunky men in chainmail with big swords came out and went, there was a mighty battle. Many died. And we were like, yep.
That sums it up. That's great.
That's it.
Yeah, that's epic. When I was a teenager, I went with a couple of friends of mine to a production of Lord of the Rings. It was a stage production with people. They were kind of like marionettes, people in like black black suits from head to toe. So they kind of blended it with the stage, and they were holding these kind of puppets and marionettes up, and they were acting the characters. And it was about an hour and a half, and it tried to tell the whole story, because we were all Tolkien fans at the time, so we knew what the story pretty well. But it did the same thing. It like got to a point in the Fellowship of the Ring, completely skipped through most of Two Towers and like easily the first half of Return of the King, and then like got to the end, and we were all like just kind of like, what happened here? Wait a minute, where's the half of the story? And I remember being asked about that. Someone from like a local news agency, was interviewing us, and we were telling them, did you like the play? And we're like, no, sorry, because of those things. So I'm sure we came off as being kind of like, asshats, but
it was incredible because it wasn't puppets, it was actually live people, and we were lucky enough to have front row seats. We got on the front row. And we got into the theatre sort of 5 or 10 minutes before the curtain was due up. And they had the people dressed as the hobbits actually catching fireflies by the stage and doing a nice little vignette of just hobbit life in the Shire, which was lovely. And they had the most amazing feet. The actors had the big feet with the hair, and it was just it was just really great. But then the orcs were terrifying. They were dressed up in orc costumes, and they were all on those sort of curved stilts that you can wear, the bouncing stilts.
Right.
And they jumped off the stage at one point and were running around the audience, which was terrifying. And one came and crouched right down next to me and just breathed on me. Now, I knew, my logic head knew there was an actor in there, but my heart was pounding. I was actually terrified. And then he jumped up and he jumped onto the arm of my chair, and he actually ran across the whole front row, just going from arm to arm on those stilts.
Oh my god!
Over a whole row of people, and everybody just froze. Everyone in the front row just went. This
Oh,
person just
wow.
has, I mean, the skill, because if he'd slipped, that would have been that stilt into someone's crotch, and that would have been a lawsuit. So
Yeah, that would have been bad. I mean, he must have been a gymnast. Wow, that would have been terrifying all
yeah,
in of its own. It's like watching the Chinese theater acrobats coming and watching them live and watching someone stack 20 chairs up and then do a handstand on top.
yeah,
You're just waiting for it to collapse and everyone die. Wow, that's exciting.
that was
Um,
amazing. And then in the coach coming home, we sat there and we were talking about it, and everyone was just, I think we were just completely blown away by what we'd seen. It was just a completely stunning performance. And driving home, my cousin who I'd gone with was saying, "Oh, I loved it. But isn't it a shame it's all boys? That very much, Tolkien was about the men. There's not really many meaty girl parts." And I said, "Yeah, there absolutely should be more stories when it's the girls who go and quest and do the stuff." And that was when the germ of an idea struck me. And by the time I reached home, I'd written down sort of an idea, the premise. And a few years later, that premise became my novel, Erinsmore, which is my kind of fantasy realm book, and
nice.
it's actually two sisters who go and do the daring do and all the fighting. So yeah, it's funny. People say, where do you get the seeds of ideas from? Well, anywhere,
No,
anywhere like that.
that's great. That's wonderful. No, I love that. That makes perfect sense. If you don't see yourself, you put yourself in that role. That's where earliest fantasy comes from, is imagining in that. And if you don't see yourself, other than like Galadriel and there was another like two, only two.
Elwyn, there were
Yeah,
three, weren't
the
there?
queen of
There was
the queen of the elves, and then like her daughter, and there was I,
there was I remember three. There was the first one who was oh, is it an Ella or Elwyn or something? She was the elf princess who
yeah,
rescued Frodo. She rode off with him on her horse and rescued him. Yes.
okay,
Yeah, and then she was in love with Aragon, the one who
right,
eventually, yeah, Aragon, that's it. Then you had Galadriel, who really didn't have a very big part at all in it. She floats in and out, but that's about it.
yeah.
And then you had the princess who was the daughter of the King Frozen, and she's the one who actually kills the baddie right at the end because she's not a
Oh,
man.
right, right,
Yes. Yeah, I
exactly,
can't remember.
yes.
We're
I'm like,
terrible. Tolkien fans are going to be cursing our eyes because we can't remember any of the names.
no,
But
no, it's fine. It's like I'm thinking like, for someone who hasn't read these books, boy, you really know. I'm like, oh, you've seen the movies, but well,
I've seen
it's
the
been
movies about
it's
10
yeah,
times.
okay, that's right. Yeah, I've seen them. It's probably been 18 years. Like when I saw them when they came out, and then like I haven't seen them since. But
Well, that was
no,
that was the joy of lockdown. That was the joy of all those lockdowns.
I see. Yes, no, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. I was on your Instagram page, and I like how you refer to yourself as a writer for all seasons, and that's because of your multiple genres. So, can you tell us what genres do you write?
Ooh, okay,
We got the
so
fantasy, I
far,
know that.
well, different shades of fantasy as
Oh,
well.
bring it.
I've written Erinsmore is classed as a YA fantasy. Although I must admit, when I wrote it, it never even occurred to me it was YA. It wasn't until afterwards that somebody said, "Oh, well, this is YA," and I went, "Okay." So
Okay.
YA, YA fantasy. I've written what I like to call folklore fantasy, which the forest is very much old English, old magic, the Green Man, that sort of thing. It's very folklory. Then I've got Black Ice, which is my fairy tale steampunk Snow White retelling fantasy.
Oh, nice.
But
Okay.
whatever category. I've also dabbled in sci-fi with my book Life Song. I've written contemporary drama, and I've written romantic suspense, and I've written short stories and poetry
Wow.
so
That's
far.
fantastic. Um, well, what do you like so much about writing in multiple genres?
See, again, it goes back to my naivety when I first became a writer and I first started publishing books. It didn't even occur to me that writing in different genres was such a big deal. It didn't really register with me that it was something that other people don't do or find difficult to do, because to me a story is a story. A good story is a good story. It doesn't matter what genre it is. And I think a good story, well told, can transcend genres. I mean, I know so many people who don't like science fiction, but they've seen Star Wars and they watch Star Trek. Yeah. Or
Yeah.
people who say they don't like fantasy, but they've seen Lord of the Rings. They don't like YA, but they've seen Harry Potter. I think if it's a good story, then it doesn't matter what label you stick on it. And I've had one person say to me, you know, you cross genres the way other people cross the street, but it's never that big a deal to me.
Yeah.
And sometimes when I start writing a story, I don't even realize what genre it is until I'm halfway through, and I think, oh, hang on a moment, this is fantasy. Okay, we're doing that now, are we?
Yeah, you're kind of, I think you're answering a question I'm going to ask in a few minutes, but that's okay. It's
Oh.
good. No, it's fine. No. That's what, like, I have lists of questions, but I look at this as a conversation, and I just kind of go where the conversation goes, and when that thread ends, then we can move on. But no, because I'm a multiple genre writer also, and I've written a lot of non-fiction, like a lot of academic papers, because I was in academia for longer than I wanted to be. And then I've written a couple of movies. They were kind of comedy, horror, comedy, sci-fis. And then my long fiction, I've got a cozy mystery series, a splatter western, and then a pulp action horror series. So
now, I saw that description, splatter western. What is a splatter western? Because I'm getting an image in my head that that I'm thinking is possibly not right.
I've got my books. See, I've got my product placement over here. A splatter western like this one. This is Gage Black, Hell's Revenge. You can see the tagline: "They sent him to hell. Hell sent him back."
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Hell's Arizona. I didn't know there was a term called splatter western either until I had written it. Actually, it's a very violent, gory story that takes place in the West at the time of the West, late 1860s, 70s, 80s, somewhere maybe up to the close of the 19th century. And again, I did not know that there was such a thing until I just wanted to tell a story of revenge, because I think that's the best thing in the world. Getting revenge is like the best thing in the world, for me. And it should be violent. It should be perfect, because it's got to be satisfying. In order to go to that far to get revenge, someone has to do something horrible to you. And I'm not waiting for some god to give punishment, because that's not going to happen. I'm not going to forgive them, because that's for suckers. So I want to get revenge. And so how do I make this the most painful, gruesome, satisfying kind of revenge story? And so that's what I started writing. And it was only after I'd written it that I'd heard that someone said, "Oh, you got a splatter western." I'm like, "Oh, that's a great word. I love that." And then I found out that it was a genre. So I think that's just sums it up. So my book is less a western. It's just set in the time of the West. There are Western elements, but to me, it's a historical fiction fantasy, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. Because when you say splatter, I just imagine blood splattering everywhere.
Yes, and it's gruesome. My book is rather gruesome, and I took great joy in writing those scenes. Yeah, and so the story. Gage Black is a Union soldier who, right after the Civil War, is brought up on charges of murdering a Confederate officer. But these charges are lies. It's done by a small cabal of soldiers who were going to get in trouble themselves, and so they lied, and they sent this guy, wrongly accused of murder, to Hell, Arizona, like the worst prison you can imagine. The most horrible things happen, depravity, of humanity. And so he spends his 3 years there, and during his 3 years, he loses all of his own humanity, and then he's bent on revenge to hunt down these 5 people and make them pay in the most horrific ways he can. Yeah, and so that's the story, and it was great fun. I mean, you go to dark places, and as a horror writer, that's one of the things I used to write. I like going to those dark places because I know it's not real, and that's why I let myself just go anywhere I want, because I'm telling a story. It's not going to really happen. And this story was totally, completely unfettered id on the page, no boundaries, no holding back. And that's I guess why some people, like my wife, won't read it. She got like a third of the way through, and she's like, "I can't read this anymore. I can't get these images out of my head." I'm like, "But I want to share it with you. It's like the best thing I've ever written." And my parents won't even like touch it, because I say like the word fuck and things like that in it. I'm like, "Oh, come on, it's just a word, yeah. And my dad's a Western fan, and he won't
Those kind of westerns.
I guess it's just gonna ruin his image of what a Western is, but yeah, I don't know. So but for me, it was never about I didn't want to be pegged in the same genre. Because cozy mystery, again, I didn't know what a cozy mystery was before I started writing. I did the research, and I didn't want someone to think I was just a cozy mystery writer. I didn't want
Yeah.
a Kathy Bates situation where she's going to hobble me like in Misery, and then say, "You write the next cozy, Mr. Justice." I'm like, nope, So that's why I went from cozy mystery to splatter western. That was my follow-up book.
It's
They
about as far apart as you can get, isn't it?
Exactly. Yes, it was intentional. It was like, yeah, look, I want to show that I'm going to do range, and I'm going to be the kind of writer who wants to write whatever story I want to write. And so
Well,
I completely get that. That was one thing I like really thought about you. I'm like, oh, okay, I think we're going to be kindred spirits in that. Like, we just want to tell good
well,
stories.
I get that, some people like to stick to one genre, and it's all about choice. It's fine. But I feel about it that I don't want to eat one meal for the rest of my life. I want to eat a variety of meals. So I want to read different genres. Why can't I write different genres? You
Right.
know?
Hmm.
And what I found is that now people are just used to me. Now people just go, oh yeah, that's just Julia. She writes in different genres, and it's okay.
Yeah.
I've gone past that bit. But what's lovely is I have readers. I know when I announced that I was writing my steampunk Snow White fantasy, and several of my lovely readers who have been with me through thick and thin, they went, steampunk. Okay, what's that then? Am I going to like it? And I was like, trust me, it's going to be fabulous. You're going to love it. And
Yeah.
they did. And in the reviews, people were saying, I'd never read steampunk before, but I love it. And I'm going to read some more. I'm going to try some more. So I found that I've actually carried my readers with me into genres that are outside their normal comfort zone.
Yes.
Is lovely. And I think there's no better compliment than having a reader actually say, I read genres I would never dream of reading, but because Julia's written it, I know I'm going to like it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, it sort of says to me that I have a voice that travels across the genres. And I
Mhm.
think that's one of the best things that you can aim for as a writer, to have a voice, to find your voice.
Yeah. I'm going to ask about that. Yeah, because I agree 100%. And I have a few of those readers who have told me I will read anything that you write. And
And
I felt
that's
so
like,
honored and humbled, like, oh my goodness, like that's really special. Because they're willing to take a chance on me, and read something as wildly different as what I write. And because they just like the way I write it. And so I get it. And that, to me, that is like such a satisfying, and so it's wonderful to hear. It's very humbling to hear that. Because I don't know what's going to work. You never know as a writer sometimes, like what's going to work with other people. You just don't know. So of all the genres that you write in, which is your favorite to write? Or if you can say that. I know it's like hard, like
I
it's
knew
like
you were going
picking,
to
it's
say
like choosing your children. Can you pick
that.
a favorite?
Um, oh God, it's like when people say, which is your favorite book? I know it's hard. I tend to be obsessed with whichever book I'm writing at the time. So, for example, I have my next book is coming out on Saturday. And so for the past 8 months, I have lived and breathed this book. And it's a contemporary fiction. So as I'm writing, I'm thinking, contemporary fiction is great. I love writing this. I love being able to write about everyday things. Why don't I just write this all the time? And then I know that when the next book I start writing, be it fantasy or whatever, I'll go, oh my God, I love writing fantasy. Why do I not just write fantasy all the time? I tend to get consumed by whichever work in progress I have. But that being said, if you're going to pin me down, there is something liberating about writing fantasy, because you can write whatever you please. And you're
Mhm.
not going to have somebody say, oh, but that's not true. I've looked it up, I've Googled it, and that's not what happened, or that's not how it happens, or that's too far fetched to be true. Whereas fantasy, so long as the rules make sense and they're consistent, you can do whatever you want. If you want a pink flying dragon, you can have a pink flying dragon. You can have whatever you want, so long as the reader finds it credible. I think that's the secret. Make it believable.
Yes,
So
and having it work within that world, that
yeah,
consistency, that's, I think it's key.
yeah,
And I know it's what you had just said about people saying, well, that can't be true, or this isn't right, is because some of my writer friends who do write in fantasy, they do that specifically because they don't want to have to deal with worrying about whether something is realistic or not. They can invent whole cloth the world, the mechanics, the physics of it, and and then that, as long as it's consistent, they're happy. And as a reader, you're easy to, it's easy to suspend your disbelief. Like, I'll accept the most ridiculous concepts, like in a movie like Jurassic Park. Like, oh sure, I'm fine with dinosaurs. Why not? Being bred through frogs, sure. But then like other things will get bog me down. And again, the details, like, oh, that wouldn't happen. Come on, like, look, at least make things make sense to me in that way, because I'll give you my disbelief. I'll throw it away as long as your story makes sense and is
Mhm.
consistent within itself.
Yeah, I mean, I recently read a fantasy novel where there was magic involved, which is fine. I like magic, you know. And she stated right from the very beginning that all magic came with a price, that whenever you performed magic, there was something you had to sacrifice or some price that had to be paid. If not by you, then by somebody else, it had to be paid. And all the way through, this was consistent. So I was like, fine, okay, I get it. You know, there's a price tag to using magic. And then at the end, in the big showdown, the heroine uses magic willy-nilly and absolutely no blooming price tag. And I'm like, no, hang on a minute. You just spent the whole book, all 475 pages of it, telling me that there has to be a price paid. And now there isn't, just because it's the finale. No,
Yeah,
sorry.
unless someone
Again,
else is paying the price. Because I'm
or off
thinking,
stage.
yeah, because I'm thinking like, oh, if I can do this, it's like that theoretical situation. Like, if you push a button, you're going to get $10 million, but somebody in the world's going to die. And I'm going to be like, how many hundreds can I get?
Can I pick who? Can I
Yeah,
pick
can I
who?
please? Because I've got a list. I got a purge list, you know? Right.
Because I can think of a few world problems right now I can end by pressing that
Yes.
button.
Thank you. I know, right? Exactly. Right. Yes, I've got a nice little purge list that would just make things so much better in the world. No, I totally get it. I think you kind of hinted on this before when you were coming back from seeing Lord of the Rings, but my question was going like, what made you first want to start writing? And from what I understand, is like you were inspired because there weren't enough female leads. That inspired you to come up with this story. Is that what inspired you to begin writing in the first place?
No, gosh, no. I've been writing since before I could write. I used to make up stories for my toys. I was always, my mother tells me, I was always babbling away some imaginary, I had an imaginary friend, and the imaginary friend and I used to get into all sorts of trouble. And I would spin great big stories about how it wasn't me who ate the piece of cake that was there. It was my imaginary friend, and they had to eat it because, and then there'd be some big convoluted reason why the piece of cake was no longer on the plate, you know. And then when I got older and I could write, I used to write little stories for my toys to act out. I made up stories in the playground in my primary school. I was the storyteller. I was always telling stories. I used to write the school plays and just get great fun watching them being acted out. I wrote comical poems to go in friends' Christmas cards and birthday cards. I was always writing some kind of thing. I attempted my first novel when I was 13. I didn't get very far and it was absolute rubbish. I didn't know enough about life. I hadn't got enough experience to actually sit down and stick to something. I used to love English was my favorite lesson because essay writing, I used to love writing essays. You know, the rest of my classmates were like, oh no, essays. And I'd be going, goody, how many pages long does it have to be? That sort of thing. Um, then of course I got married and left school, got a job, got married, and life kind of stopped the writing for a while. And I didn't get back into it until I was about just 37, 38 when I started getting back into it. I'll be very honest with you, I was going through a horrible divorce that was ripping the stuffing out of me. I had to bite my tongue so hard all the time that I just had blisters on my tongue from having to hold back everything that I wanted to say and couldn't, because I had a very small child who was obviously torn in the middle, and I didn't want her to get hurt. And then one day a friend of mine said, look, there's a creative writing course happening at the local college. It's on one night a week for 6 weeks. I really want to go because I'm looking at writing up some of my family history, and I would like to learn the tools about how to write this. And I don't want to go alone. Do you want to come with me? And I suddenly realized that it was the one thing I really, really wanted to do. So I managed to persuade my mum to come and babysit for me once a week. And I went to the writing course, and the very first lesson, very first session, it was like a light bulb went off in my head. It was just this boom, this is what I want to do. And I went home that night and I started writing, and 3 months later I'd written my first 120,000 word novel. It just, I think a lot of it was cathartic.
Yes.
It was very much kind of, I've got so much frustration and so much anger inside me, it's got to come out.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, my child was still a baby, so she napped a lot. She used to nap for Britain, and she used to go to bed at 5 o'clock in the evening, and I'd be on my own. And I'd have two choices, either drink a whole bottle of wine to myself or write. And I decided, for the sake of my liver, that writing was probably the safer option. And I would just sit there until midnight, just frantically writing. It was all longhand. I didn't even have a computer then. I had nothing. I was just pages and pages and pages, handwritten. And then in the end, I managed to scrape together enough money to buy a computer. And I had to sit there and put it all onto computer. And it kind of opened the floodgates. I just started writing. Every moment I had, I started writing. I kept in contact with a group of friends from that writing course, and we used to meet once a week and read to each other or read each other's writing that we'd done during the week. So I would try and get at least one, if not two chapters of the current book I was writing on done each week, ready for the group to sit and read. And I started querying, I started sending my stuff off to agents and to publishing houses and just desperately trying to get noticed. But of course, it's trying to get an agent is almost impossible in the UK. It's really, really hard. It's such a closed shop. So I tried 13 years. I have a folder with 475 rejection letters in.
Nice.
And they are just the ones who bothered to answer.
Right.
So,
Yeah, because now, like the hearing nothing back, that's like the new no, which drives me bonkers. It's so impolite, you know.
But in
I
the
just want to
meantime,
send them back a box of middle fingers and just say,
I
look,
know.
this is all I can put in, you know.
And some of the rejections were just horrible. Some of them were just really nasty. I'll never forget one I received. It said, oh, thank you very much for the opening chapters, which we read with interest. We only take on a very small percentage of new authors each year, and we have to be really excited about their work. Sadly, no one was excited by yours. So
Well, I can appreciate their honesty. That's great.
and then they followed it up with, however, we have produced a book called How to Impress Agents and Get Yourself a Publishing Deal. It's a slip of $14.99. If you'd like to contact us, we can. Well, at this point, I wouldn't have bought a glass of water off them if I was on fire, you know.
Right.
So I opened up the envelope to take out my 3 useless chapters and looked at them and realized it wasn't even my work. It was somebody else's work.
Oh, wow. They got it confused. They mixed up. Oh, that's funny. That is hysterical. Wow.
So I kept going though, and during those 13 years, I wrote 6 novels. I wrote about a dozen short stories. I wrote a lot of poetry. I did have some small successes. Did you ever have in America something called Reader's Digest?
Yeah.
Did you get that over there? Yeah.
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
Well, they used to run a competition for 100-word short story, and I won one. I won one of the competitions. So that was a little bit that just kept me going. And then I heard about the L. Ron Hubbard Writers of the Future Novella competition. I don't know if that's still running, but that was a thing.
Yeah, I didn't know that was a thing. I mean, I know all about the Scientology and the backlash against that, but I didn't know there was a writing competition.
Yeah, there was. It was for fantasy, sci-fi, and dark fantasy, and you had to submit a novella in one of those genres, and it couldn't be over 17,000 words long.
Okay.
And it just something piqued my interest about that. There was also an awful lot on the news at the time about Greenpeace and the state of the planet and global warming and what was happening. And at the same time, I had discovered an amazing composer called Carl Jenkins, who had just released, well, a couple of years earlier, had released an album called Adi Amos, which was exploring the human voice and music that can be made, not with words, but just with choral sounds, just nonsensical singing, which is it's stunningly beautiful. If you get a chance to look it up, then do, because it's absolutely gorgeous. So this kind of all these 3 strands came together, and I sat down and I began to write. And I wrote a short novella, 17,000 words exactly, called Life Song. And it explored the idea that an alien girl comes to our world, and she's from a very different place where they live in harmony with their life song, which is kind of a force that connects all living matter. And you don't hurt other people because it would hurt you through the life song. So everyone just lives in harmony. And she comes to this planet where every creature teems with life song. Every species has life song except one,
Yeah.
us, man.
Right.
We lost
Yeah.
it.
Because we're dicks. Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
basically, yeah. So I submitted it, and much to my delight, I came fourth in the world, which was astonishing. It was the first time anyone had ever really said to me, yes, you can write. You know, I'd had
Yeah.
so many rejections over so many years that it does start to nibble at your soul after a while, and you begin to
Yeah.
really self-doubt.
475. I'm just staggered at that number. Right. Well, so now I'm assuming you self-published, or did you get
I
a publisher?
eventually, I got picked up by Small Press for my first book, The Book of Eve, and that was published. And in my naivety, I thought, oh, that's it. I am a published author. It won't be long before I can give up work and sit at home and just write all the time, and it will be amazing.
Right.
And of course, real life went, yeah, no, not
Yeah.
going to happen.
Right.
I had not realized, because I was so naive and so innocent about the world of publishing, I did not realize there's a big difference between traditional, the top 4 or 5 publishing houses, and small press.
Yeah.
There is a world of difference. And this small press didn't treat me particularly well. They took away my copyright for a number of years. They took away all my control. They said they were going to edit my book, and they didn't. They actually published the first draft. They
Oh,
just,
wow.
uh,
I'm hurting
and
inside for you, Julia. Oh
I
man.
know, I know. And of course, once I gained a little more knowledge, and I realized just how truly awful my book was, I went back to them and said, look, it needs to be edited. You said you were going to edit it. You plainly haven't. It needs to be edited. And they came back and said, yes, well, if you want to pay for us to edit, that will be another
Oh my
£500.
God.
So I had to leave it. I had to leave it. I had to wait. I had to wait until I could buy back copyright. But in the meantime, it did get over 50 rave reviews. So one or two people did say there are some grammatical errors, but
Right.
the story is so great, overlook them. So that was nice. That was nice that people did do that, did actually have the generosity of spirit to look beyond the punctuation and the grammar errors and actually see the story underneath. So that was nice.
That
But
is nice.
it was such a great moment when I was able to just buy copyright back, tell the publishing house where they could get off, and then I completely took the book apart. It was professionally edited, it was reformatted, brand new cover, new concept, and then I re-released it 2 years ago. And yeah, but then all my other books after that, I am just giving up on the world of publishing. I'm just going to
Yeah.
self-publish.
Self-publishing. KDP has been an utter disruptor of and when you know that even in the big houses, unless you're one of the 1% of writers who actually make money, most books sell fewer than 200 copies a year, fewer than 1,000 copies in the book's lifetime. Almost all books. That's the average. And there's no, I'm so grateful for the ability for the self-publishing, because I keep control over my content and my cover, and I do the editing, and publishing houses don't do marketing anymore. I mean, if you have a big name like Stephen King, you don't need to do any marketing. The name will do the marketing, or J.K. Rowling, those things like that. It's like the name's already out there, but having other than that, when the publisher's telling you got to do your own marketing, then why am I bothering? I'm out to
Yeah,
just do it all myself.
and get 70% of the royalties. Why let you do
Right.
it and get 10%? Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, exactly. Right. On a good day, get 10%. And then when the books don't sell, then you got to buy them back. And this way it's print on demand. That's wonderful, so um what makes a good story to you?
Um, Now, everybody has a different idea. For me, it tends to be the characters. I have to like characters, or at least relate to them, or at least be fascinated by them. I have read some amazing books where not a lot happens plot-wise. It is basically almost like the two people sitting in a room talking. But if the characters have something interesting to say, then I'm going to listen to it. and I don't really care sometimes about the story. It's about people's reaction to what's happening around them. So it is the characters for me. I've given up reading books because I didn't care about the characters. The most exciting plot in the world was happening all around them, but I really didn't give a damn about the character. And I think if you don't care about the character, then there's no point to the book, really. So I hope that answers that.
Yeah, no, it does. Yeah, and that's why like everyone's answer is different. And I'm going to guess when we talk about your character building, that's going to be something that is going to be prominent for you. But in order, those characters have to have a place to live. So that's my next question, is about world building. You've got different genres, different types of fantasy genres that are, while fantasy, all very different. So how do you go about designing your world or building your world? Worlds, plural.
Plural. They sort of build themselves in my head. I'm not a plotter. I don't plot anything. I don't even own a notebook, which makes most plotters very, very nervous and very anxious. Not even
Well,
one.
that answers
No,
that question.
I do not own a notebook. I don't. Everything's in here. And when I sit down to write, I have a vague idea of what I'm doing. Sometimes I usually have a title. Very often a great title will come into my head and I'll think, wow, that's an amazing title to a book. Let's write a story to go with it. That's the sort of thing I do. Or sometimes a character will just stroll into my head, plop themselves down in a chair and go, right, you're going to write about me now because I'm fascinating. Listen, take notes. You're going to need to listen to this.
You're like, I
And
don't have a notebook.
yeah, and they're going, well, write it down, and I'll just type, because
Yes.
I sit down at my laptop, I kind of open up my brain, and it's like a direct conduit between my characters and the keyboard, and it just goes straight through. Sometimes when I come back into myself at the end of a writing session, I'll sit and read through what I've written, and I'll go, oh, okay, oh, okay, we're doing this now, are we? All right, fine. Or, for example, in Black Ice, I was writing it, and one character suddenly came out with a subtle way of telling me they were gay, and I was just did not see that coming. Okay, that's fine. We're doing this now, are we? Right. So my characters very much kind of create their world around them, and it builds. I think it. Oh, the best way to explain it. Do you know those domino exhibitions they put up where they spend ages setting up all the dominoes on end to make big patterns, and then you just flick one domino and it goes on to the next and the next and the next, and then gradually it makes this incredible pattern. And it's not until they're all down and you step back and you look at it, you go, oh, there it is. I'm a bit like that with my writing. I have one tiny idea, a seed of an idea, and that taps the first domino over. And then that grows into another idea and another and another. And then pretty soon I'm just grabbing ideas from all directions, weaving them together. And at the end, I stand back and I look at the world I've created and go, that makes sense. Yeah.
And it all comes together and makes sense. There's no like looking back and going, oh my God, it's like an oil painting done by a class of third graders or three, what the hell is this? Do you ever like step back and go, whoa, my God, what did I do?
I've learned to trust my process. It sounds like I don't actually have a process. It does sound like it's a bit of a hot mess, but it actually works. It works for me. And this is the wonderful thing about writing.
Your process. Exactly. Right.
My process. It writes.
Yes.
I literally, and my brain does weird things. Like it'll plant an idea or a red herring, it will put in a plot device. And as I'm writing, I'll think, well, that's weird. Why have I done that? Why have I put that? Okay. And I'll just carry on. I'll fix it in the edit. I'll just carry on. And then about 6 or 7 or 8 or even further chapters down the line, my brain will go, now you remember that thing we did way back in chapter 2? Well, ta-da, here's where it comes into play. And I'm like, okay, I get it now. That's really clever. Okay, that's really, really clever. And then I'll just carry on. It just does that. And I've learned now not to question. To just
yes. If it's working, you gotta trust. It shows a deep trust of yourself. That's fascinating. This is the first time I've ever heard that explanation, and it makes sense. I'm a plotter, so the thought of going into pantsing something, a novel, just from an idea without writing extensive notes and outlining, just makes me want to vomit. It's like the nausea, the anxiety, like, oh God, no. And
The way
I've
I
talked,
try to explain it to plotters is,
but no,
it's like
that
if you
makes
have a
sense.
butterfly, if you have a
Yeah,
butterfly, to me, a story is like a butterfly. If I pin it down to plot it,
yeah.
I still have the butterfly, but it won't fly anymore. I've killed
Oh,
it.
I see.
So if I did try to plot once and it killed the story idea
Yeah, for
stone dead.
you, right. And the pantsing would kill it for me because I'd be like so lost. I'd be like, I wouldn't know where I'd end up. I'd be like, oh my God, I've dug myself into a grave here.
Well,
Um,
I'll give you a really good example. In my book,
sure.
Black Eyes, which is a Snow White steampunk retelling, you have this kind of organization called the Contratulum, which control everything. They control the magic, and magic is outlawed by them because they don't want any threats to them. So I have this one wonderful situation where Mirage, who's one of the head henchmen, is going to see the absolute top of the Contratulum, a guy called Pontifex Sly, who controls everything. From his fat little fingers, he controls everything. And before Mirage can get into his office to see him, he has to go past the clerk at the desk. And the clerk just says, "Weapons in the basket, please." So he has to divest himself of all the weapons. And that was all that little character was ever going to do. I didn't even give him a name because he wasn't important enough. I just planted him at that desk, taking people's weapons off them and giving them admittance to the Pontifex's office. Chapters later, I run into a bit of a plot hole, a bit of a problem. I need to get information from one side of the kingdom across to another kingdom. But of course, it's a fantasy kingdom. There are no texts, there's no telex, there's no nothing like that. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh, how am I going to get the goodies, the good guys over here, to have the same information that the bad guys have got over here? How am I going to do that? And then the little doorkeep, little desk clerk, wanders into my brain and says, "Can I have a word with you?" I said, "No, no, not right now. I'm busy. I've got a problem here." And he went, "No, no, I need to talk to you." I went, "No, no, no, I've got to, no, go away." And he said, "I want to talk to you about my character." "What about your character? You don't have a character. You're barely a concept. Just go away." And he said, "No, I think you're undervaluing my character. My character can do so much more than he's doing." I went, "Go away. Don't have time." He said, "For instance, did you know that my character has been working undercover for the Allies for all these years and is a mole planted in the Contratulum and has been gathering information?" I went, "I'm listening. I'm listening. Keep talking." And he said, "And did you know that he's been smuggling all this information out to the Allies? So he could quite easily have sent this information through the spy network to the good guys." That actually makes a lot of sense. Okay, okay. And then he said, "I do have a backstory." And he told me his backstory, which made perfect sense as to why he was this mole. And I said, "I still haven't got a name for you." He said, "I don't need a name. I just need to be the unsung hero." And then he walked out. And he,
Bond,
yeah,
James Bond.
I think my name's already taken.
Oh yeah, yes, yes. James Bond, James. No, no, no. Julie, that is hearing how your brain works in these characters. That's fascinating. I mean, to me, I I've never had characters kind of come to life in my head like that where I'm talking to them. Um, I I have other writers who are also pantsers have said the same things to me. So it must be how we differentiate our creative process from the plotters and the pantsers. And I know a lot of my plotting came from my years in academia, both as a student and as an instructor. And I taught English composition. And so academic writing is all about order and coherent paragraphs, papers, and everything's logical. And so I carried that over into my creative side where I'm a lister. When I brainstorm, nothing's off the table. I'll just write down everything I can. And then I take the ideas I like and I like, oh, I like these five, and I'll start developing those and developing those. And then I do my outline and then I start drafting, because even though there's a roadmap, you still have to put in all the spaces that get between A to B, C. I mean, for me, it just allows me to see the big picture. And that's how I like to think, the big picture. And then I can actively begin dropping those kind of breadcrumbs or hints, foreshadowing, things like that. Or if I'm working on a theme, then it allows me to kind of bring that theme and kind of make it in a way that's like an M. Night Shyamalan movie. You don't know what the clues are until you kind of get to the end of the movie. You're like, oh, he's dead. Oh shit, I didn't know that. Yeah, I see dead people. This guy. Um, so, but I say that's what I find fascinating. I love that it's so different. You know, we all go from like one place, like the beginning of an idea, your kernel of the idea, to the end product, the book, in such wildly different ways. And that your process
But it
fascinates
all
me.
happens out loud as well. When I talk to my characters, it is out loud. And this is why it makes me laugh when I see writers say, "Oh, I love to write in coffee shops." I'd be asked to leave.
Yeah. Do people say, you know, there is a good doctor down here. Do we need medication?
Yeah, should we
Um,
phone someone and get help?
that that's great. So now we've talked a lot about this right now because my next question is after worlds, and the characters have to inhabit these worlds. So it sounds like I kind of have an idea already of how you develop your characters, because they just kind of come to you. You have conversations with them. Is there more to that, or is it like they just kind of come and then they develop and they tell you who they are as you write? Is that
Yeah,
sound about
yeah,
accurate?
very much so. Very much so. And they sometimes they change. Sometimes I have an idea in my head of a character and what they're going to be like and how they're going to fit in the story. But very often the character looks at the mapped out role I have for them and goes, "Oh, I think not." And they're off on their own and they become
Mhm.
important in other ways. Like my unnamed hero, he actually ends up saving the girl, saving the day, and we never learn his name. And he just becomes the nameless hero.
And he's okay
And
with that. Yeah,
he's okay with that.
I'm
He's
fine.
okay with that. He
I
fulfills
don't
his
I don't want to be named. I'll get all that fan mail. Who wants all that attention? That's great. Now, when I have written characters, it's something I guess close to what you've done. Like when I was starting to come up with the idea of Gauge Black, once I had the name Gauge Black, I'm like, oh, that just sounds so good, like a 12 gauge shotgun and black. Like,
sounds
yeah.
badass. It's a
And
really badass name.
yes, thank you. And I remember the first like lines I wrote for him, because I have a notebook like you, and I remember the very first inkling of when I first started writing it, and I started writing this character, and like the first line of what eventually would become this book, although that wasn't the first line in the book. Um, and the first line is, well, it did end up being the first line of the book is "You're going to hell," and I'm like, yeah, or like, yeah, it just sets the tone
Yeah,
right there, and
yeah, it
and
lets you know exactly. Yeah.
yeah, and then I heard his voice, and it's kind of like this, and it's deep and gravelly, and there was a southern twang to it, even though he's from Ohio, where I live. He's a Union officer, but there's still kind of this little bit of a Western thing, and he's just like, oh, like, yeah, and I heard him, like, yes, this is the guy. And so every time, then when it becomes more, he's kind of reticent. He doesn't speak a lot, not like Clint Eastwood's character in the spaghetti westerns, where he did really, he's just kind of reserved, but the things he has to say are very poignant and kind of comical, like black humor, like really, really dark humor. Um, and so I get it. When I wrote this character, I heard him. I saw his mannerisms. I saw his face, his grizzled appearance. Um, and I kind of knew, I got that. So that happens from time to time. I don't have conversations with them, but I hear them or I'll see them because I'm a visual writer. So it's like a movie being played out before me, and
Mhm.
I'm just trying to write the words to capture what it is that I'm seeing. So I kind of understand
And
that.
sometimes the name of a character comes first, and then
Yeah.
you build the character around the name. I mean, it's like the book I was
Yes.
telling you about, The Forest, which is very old English, a tale of old magic. That I can pinpoint the exact time that was inspired and how it was inspired.
Hmm.
It was several years ago, and I was at a family party, one of those parties where it goes from great grandfathers nodding asleep in the corner down to a babe in a pushchair somewhere in the other corner, and all the generations in between. And it was getting towards the end of the party, and my brother and I were sitting there just sharing the last dregs of a bottle of wine. And there was a group of elderly gentlemen behind us talking about the old days and who they knew and who was around. And all of a sudden, one of them just came out with the best name I have ever heard in my life. one great granddad turned to another great granddad and said, "Does anybody know what happened to old Wally Twitchett?" My brother and I just went, and I turned around and said, "Please tell me that's a real person." They went, "Oh, Wally Twitchett. Oh, yeah. He used to ride around the village on his old bike. Wonder he didn't fall off the way he used to rattle about on it." Well, by the time I went home from that party, I knew what Wally looked like. I knew the clothes he
Sure.
wore.
Yeah, he's wearing
And
tweed, obviously.
yeah, patched, clean but
Yes.
patched.
Yes,
With a
of
hat,
course.
and he's
The
grizzled, and he's
hat.
got an Adam's apple and a hook nose, and he rides on one of those little old-fashioned sit-up and beg bikes, you know.
Right. And he's
And I,
coming
so I
home
had
from
this
the bakery,
from the
and he's
pub.
got a loaf in a brown
He's
basket
coming
in
home
his
from the
bike.
pub.
And he drives by and he like waves at the cows and he rings the bell on his bike.
So I had this great character, so I needed somewhere for him to live, and of
Yeah.
course he had to live in a village. You
Sure.
can't have someone like Wally Twitchett in a city. It just doesn't
Yeah,
happen.
yeah. He's not going to be a Londoner, right? No,
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 and it's an
exactly.
old village. It's an old
Yeah.
country village.
Hobbiton. He lives now on the outskirts of Hobbiton, right? Exactly.
Yeah, that's right. So, and over the next few days, this village began to just develop and grow in my head, and all these, and I just had so much fun with the names, because all the names of the villagers in the forest are slightly off key with modern names.
Sure.
So you'll have Amos and Dorcas Blunt, who run the pub. You
Yes.
have Miss Ivy and Miss Violet Peabody, who run the shop. So
Sure.
they're all just that sort of
Right.
slightly off kilter names, you know.
It's a very cozy mystery in that regard, because Agatha Christie was really the one who began that whole genre, and with those quaint little English villages and those names, um, because that's what gives it that sense of charm, I think.
Yeah.
No,
So
I get it.
I thought,
Yes.
all right, okay, I've got this wonderful village, all these wonderful people. It's like they're trapped in time. It's like
Yes.
the time has stopped here. Why? And oh, they never leave the village ever. Ooh, why not? Because there's a giant forest next to them, and there is some entity in the forest that stops them leaving. Oh, like a cursed forest. Oh, why is it cursed? So that's how my thought processes work.
Yeah.
It tumbles over, and the dominoes are tumbling over and over, and a bigger picture is being formed. And then 4 months later, the forest was written.
There you go.
130,000 words, and complex, twisty plot that goes back centuries and twists a curse that just would not die. It twists the curse all up into one neat package in the modern day.
I love that. I love that. Um, no, your process is just joyous to me. And again, this is the most like rewarding aspect of doing this show, is like just understanding and hearing about the process, because there's so much joy that comes out when you're speaking about it, and I can't help but just respond to that like, oh yeah, this is magnificent. um oh, which of your characters would you most like to have a drink with?
Oh, again, there's so many great characters.
I mean, you talk to them all the time, so it may not be a big deal because
Yeah,
you
well, we
obviously
have breakfast
spend
all the
time. I
time.
mean, yeah, it's like, you've got a, they're all coming over for holiday dinner.
Yeah.
So
I guess maybe the latest book that I've just finished writing, I've just actually Amazon just delivered my copy. Yeah.
nice. Oh yes,
Yeah.
yeah, I saw the one with you had
Yeah.
your author copy. Very nice.
Yeah. So they literally delivered it 2 minutes before I came on with you, which I was relieved about, because I thought they're going to be ringing the doorbell halfway through the interview. I know they are. The main character in this book, Rose, is more than any other character I've written. She is me, really. There is so much of me in this woman. She's going through a messy and unfair divorce. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
Leaving her a single parent of a daughter, again, and all her choices have been taken away from her, and she's been treated very unfairly. Which, yeah. So, and she takes refuge in. She swears like a sailor on shore leave, which
I love that. Yes.
she really does have a bit of a potty mouth when when something's happened and she gets out of earshot of her child. It is very.
You can say those words. It's okay. I like to swear. So
Oh, okay.
we
Well,
can say,
some of her
yeah,
swear words. Yeah, some of her swear words are a little bit British inventive. So
that's even better, because then that's fine. My audience who isn't from England wouldn't know. So let's hear a
Well, there
good
are a
British
few
swear word.
words in there that I think they will have no trouble understanding. I wouldn't
Okay.
want to say them on open air, but
Oh, I
it tends
see.
to be along the, oh, buggery, bollocks, bloody bugger to it, that sort of thing.
Sure. Right. Those are very tame.
She,
Okay.
yeah, she's in the
Yes.
corner kind of muttering away. He's a wank stain. Arthritis. So
Right.
she's muttering away in the corner because she's received some missive from her divorce lawyer about some latest horrible thing that her husband has demanded or said. And she has to be all sweetness and light in front of her daughter, who's a daddy's girl. And the minute her daughter's out the way, she's hitting the wine, going, buggery, bollocks, and bloody,
Yeah.
oh! just, and I just feel her pain because I've lived through it.
Well,
And
it's
there's so many things that happened to her that happened to me. There
oh,
is a lot.
it's very autobiographical from what you've just explained. What we've talked about. So, and you would also touch on the fact that writing can be cathartic, and I find that to be incredibly true. It allows us to process those things in a way that's healthy, because it allows us to explore them in a safe manner, and to really be in touch with all those emotions and our thoughts. And I'm assuming that this had to be an incredibly rewarding and kind of purging book for you, and allow you to kind of deal with all this pent up trauma and all emotion in a way that you had to feel better when it was done.
Well, all of this happened, of course, a very long time ago. It kind of happened. My daughter's now over 18, and this all happened when
Oh,
she
oh,
was only 1.
oh, okay.
So it kind of, I was stuck in a position 17 years ago where I suddenly had no husband, no marriage, no income, and a 1-year-old baby who I was
Yeah,
left raising by myself. There wasn't a lot of time for self-indulgence. There
sure, that
wasn't,
makes sense. Yeah,
yeah, there
you
wasn't
weren't in the
time.
throes of the emotion. You were just trying to
Yeah.
meet your needs.
Well,
Right.
there is actually a line in Rambling Rose where I say that Rose feels herself click into survival mode. And
Yeah.
there is very much that aspect where I had one night to mourn my marriage, and then I woke up next morning and thought, right, I've got a house to keep and a baby to raise. How am I going to do this?
Yeah.
And any emotions that I had about it had to be put in a box.
Sure.
And I sort of thought to myself, I will look at those later.
Right.
And sure, I think there were moments when some things kind of sneaked out of the box, a bit like Pandora's box, a few things sneaked out. But 17 years down the line, I'm done with it.
Yeah. Well, you've had
Writing
the
Rose,
time.
yeah, I've had the time. It's fine. Writing Rose, I was seeing actually more the funny side of the situations that Rose finds herself in, and that I found myself in. I think my humor helped me survive a lot better than many people would have done, because I was able to sit there and go, okay, this has happened. And I was able to just pop the cork on the wine and go, right, okay, bring it on, life. What else are you going to give me?
Right.
And I was able to sort of deal with it that way. But writing Rose now, I do feel a great sense of completion in many ways, because Rose is book 3 in a trilogy. And I wrote book 1 way back about 15 years ago when I was going through the divorce. So it kind of felt like it was a beginning. That part was very much in the beginning. And these characters, I have lived with them now for 15 years. I've lived with them for 15, 16 years. They've been in my head. So the fact that the last story is now told, the last word is written, it is kind of very bittersweet. There's very much a sense of completion and connections. There's very much a sense of goodbye and regret, because I really love these characters. They've been with me for so long. They're more real to me than most of my family, but
Hmm.
don't tell my family that. And the fact I'm now saying goodbye to them is a little sad, but there's also a sense of amazing achievement, because they are big books. They're big books.
Yeah.
I mean, Lily is 175,000 words. Chaining Daisy is 160,000 words, and Rambling Rose
Oh,
is 180,000
oh my
words.
God. That's like 600 pages.
No,
Well, it depends on the
450.
font. Oh, you
Yeah,
must
the
be
font's
okay.
not
I'm
cheap.
going with 11 font, single space. It's about 300, 320. Wow, those are still 500 plus page books.
Well,
That's really big.
450 pages in almost each. They're big
Okay.
books. Big
Yeah,
books.
that's big. What font do you write in when you print it out?
Bookman Old Style, pitch 10.
Oh, 10. Oh, no wonder. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's nice because I've had to go to Bookman 10, because otherwise the books are so long that they
Yeah.
go over the 500-page mark, and then Amazon want to charge me double production costs.
Ooh, wow. Okay. Well, that's good
Yeah,
to
so
know. Yeah, I
yeah.
do 11 because, especially with the cozies, because the audience tends to skew a little bit little bit older on that end, the ones who want buying the cozy mysteries and are always like, oh, I can read this. And that was a very conscious decision on my part. And because I want people to read it and enjoy it and not be, like buying an old paperback back in the day, you get this 6 font or 5 point and you're like, fine, and I have 16-year-old eyes. I can read, I can read anything. But now it's like, I want to be able to read it and be comfortable. So
it gets to a point where the arms are just not long enough.
exactly. Yeah. What part of the writing process do you like the most?
The beginning, the writing, the beginning of the book, when it's like an unplowed field where it's endless possibilities. You have no idea, in my case, literally no idea where this story is going. I might think I do, but I don't. Because sometimes the story I get is not the story I intended or the story I thought about, or even the story I told friends I was going to write. Sometimes the story I end up with is so radically different. But I love that. It's so exciting, and there's that element of freshness and what am I going to get? What's going to happen? And every day when I sit down to write, it is literally discovery writing, which is a good word for it. I don't actually like the word pantser. I think discovery writer is a lot better. So
It's good.
yeah.
I mean, I never, that's true. I think, but all writing though, no matter how much you plan and plot, there's still discovery as you go through it. I mean, my current book, it's the second of the cozy series. It's going to be about 450 pages. My outline's like 26 pages long, color coded, I mean, I know what's going to happen, but it still doesn't mean that just because I have a thing that says, X happens here, I still have to write it out. And so what I found the most exciting about writing is that there's intention and invention, imagination and discovery kind of all meet. And for me, it happens less about the plot because I'm writing a mystery, so the plot needs to kind of follow a specific guiding, but it's about the characters, and the characters develop and blossom in ways that I didn't expect, because some characters will become, I want this character, I intend this character to be a secondary character, and this character through writing will be like, oh, this character is too fun, I have to do more with this character. That's the discovery. And because I'm going back and forth between third person omniscient narrator and the first person inner monologue, the character's monologue, how she finishes sentences, the narrator's sentences, and so much of the book is told from her point of view. The whole book is that it's about exploring how she's responding to things, and like your journey and your character's journey. At first, she lost her job, she's depressed, and that was the first book. She's trying to get her base needs met, and now the second book, those have been met. I'm using Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and now so she's a little more further evolved in this messy like relationships and connections to people and friendships and where do I stand, and it's a lot messier of a book because she's too much in her head now. Her needs have been met. Now she's like wondering what's going on, and that's kind of fun to write because she's just becoming like this kind of an overthinking train wreck. But that's something that happened, and it's also tying in because the books are seasonal. So the winter book was the first, and now it's spring. And so when I think of spring, I don't think about daisies and flowers and pretty butterflies. I'm looking at the spring like it is right now, where it's wet and it's ugly. The trees are still look like they're dead. There's mud everywhere. The snow is still melting, scraped up ground from the plows, and just dead things everywhere. That's the spring. It's Good Friday. It's not Easter, to put it in religious terms. And there's a lot of Good Friday in this book, and I like playing with that theme, but anyway, sorry to get off on that tangent for you. But yeah, I like the give and take, sharing of our process and our looks at things, because yours is so wildly different, but the characters evolve and in the similar ways. Like you're writing and you don't know what's going to happen, and you don't know what your characters are going to evolve too. And
sometimes I can make a plan and my characters just literally tear that plan up in front of my face. I mean, again, in Black Ice, I had this character who I really didn't like to begin with. I thought he was an arrogant pig, to be honest, and I planned to kill him. I was like, sorry, I'm going to kill you.
You're going to kill you.
Sure it's going to be a glorious death, and it will be for the good of everyone, and it will be wonderful. And then he turned around and he came out with a line and he said something to one of the other characters, and I went, oh, okay, well now I can't kill.
You've redeemed yourself, you son of a bitch. How dare you?
Oh, he's gonna have a redemption arc, aren't you? Oh no. And now you're going
um,
to end up my favorite character, and all my readers are going to say, we didn't like him to start with, but then we loved him.
right. Well, that's a whole, that redemption, that's very much a type of archetype as well, that redemptive character arc too. That's important. We see that, in a lot of characters. They do something, they start off as the scoundrel and they redeem themselves. That's very much a Jungian kind of character. So, or as in, to put it in Joseph Campbell, the hero's journey. That's a type of hero's journey, so I get that. When did you first come to realize what your writer voice was? Like when you first started saying, yeah, you've been writing for a long time. So was there a time when you start being confident, like, yeah, this is how I want to say things versus trying to be imitative of other writers?
Oh, that's a really tough one to answer. I think a lot of it's because I'm quite bloody minded. I don't allow myself to be swayed by trends or fashion. I am, as you can tell, I am the most unfashionable person ever.
Well, all
I
I
don't.
see is like from here, this is what I see. So I don't know if you're fashionable or not, but
It's a hoodie, not
oh,
fashionable.
that's great. Yeah. And
It's a hoodie.
that's
In
fine.
fact, it's my teenage daughter's hoodie, if that makes it slightly more cool.
Well, look how, see, you're so trendy, right? Yeah.
There you go. I've never been one to run with the herd. I've always been the stupid sheep at the back who goes, no, you know what? I'm not going to follow you all to the pen. I'm just going to go off over here and explore these cliff edges because they look more fun. I've always been kind of the sort of person who sits there very quietly and listens while instructions are given. And then the minute the instructor stopped talking, I'll turn to the rest of the class and go, what do we have to do? I'm that person.
That's great.
So I think, I don't know, my voice has always been the same, that I like consistency in my books, and that I like to write characters who people can relate to and believe in. I think for me, that's one theme that runs through all my books, through all the genres. People have got to either root for my characters or understand them. There has to be a reason. I
Sure.
once read a great line somewhere that said, no one is a villain for the sheer hell of it. There always has to be a motive. Yeah,
Because
there has
to
to be
them,
a
they're not
motive.
a villain.
Yeah,
They're a hero in their own world.
yeah. There has to be a motive to what they're doing.
Hmm.
They want world domination. Okay, that's the reason. They
Sure.
want to get revenge for their dead wife. That's a reason.
Yeah.
There's always a reason, a motive, an excuse. There's always a reason. And I
Yeah.
think the people who fail at writing don't give their villains a credible reason or a personality.
Yeah.
Sometimes villains can be very two-dimensional. There needs to
Yes.
be depth. I think sometimes there needs to be more depth to the villain than there does to the hero.
Well, the hero is defined by the villain, and if there's no villain, then there can't be no hero.
Yeah.
Right. The last book I did with the pulp action horror, called Death's Head, and it was my homage to Lee Falk's pulp hero, the Phantom, which I grew up reading as a kid. Loved the Phantom. So it takes place on and near Haiti in the early 1930s, and I knew this villain. I planned it out, I got a plotter, but I didn't know what the villain was going to be like until I wrote the first line that came out of his mouth. And then it was like, oh my God, I love this guy. This villain is
Right, there you are.
so great. And I just took such joy writing this smug, sarcastic, contemptuous like character. Because I thought originally, like, yeah, maybe we'll see how we do. Maybe we'll kill him off. Like, as I started writing, I'm like, there's no way I'm killing him off. He's got to last because this guy's too delicious to
Yeah,
to
he's
kill
going to be
off.
in the next book. He's going to be in the next book and the
Oh
next and
yeah,
the
he's
next.
like an ongoing villain. He's like, right. He's like Spectre and Bond. There's this ever-present threat. He's got to be, and once you meet him, because he's funny and he's just so condescending, and after the show's over, well, I don't know, I don't want to spoil it. If you decide to read it, because I'm going to send you some books and feel no obligation to read them. Maybe we'll do a book swap. But if you choose to read it, I don't want to spoil it because I think that's part of the fun,
Yeah.
is discovering who this character is. But anyway, yes, you have to have a good villain, and those characters can the secondary and tertiary characters sometimes just take their own lives. They blow up, and you want them more. They like push their way into it. Say like, look, no, I may be a supporting role, but I'm going to be memorable. I'm going to steal every scene that I'm in, and your readers are going to love that. You know.
I'm going to be Alan Rickman in Prince of Thieves. Yes.
Right, Alan Rickman in anything.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Oh, I miss poor Alan Rickman. Yeah, because he was delightful in Galaxy Quest as well. Just
Galaxy Quest, did you say? Is that Galaxy Quest?
yeah,
Say yeah, I love that film.
yes.
Brilliant
Oh,
film.
yeah, it's brilliant. Yeah, and Love Actually.
Mhm.
Just such, yeah. So he's just a wonderful actor. Um, okay, that one you've answered. Do you do any kinds of research for your books? I thought that's what I was waiting for the answer. I'm like, no, she's not gonna do. She's gonna say no.
Actually, I do a little. For example, in my current book, I don't want to give too many spoilers, but there is an incident where somebody is in an accident and they have injuries, which leaves them a paraplegic.
Oh,
So I reached out to a fellow author who is a physiotherapist. So we had some one-on-one consultations via Zoom just so I could write down notes about the actual medical procedures, rehabilitation, therapy, what expectations there would be around the nature of this injury, what his abilities would be, that sort of thing. So I do that kind of research. I will Google important dates if I'm writing a contemporary and I want to involve a world event or something that happened. I will actually research, well, what time of the day did it happen? So I can't say that someone was cooking their evening meal when something came on the news and they were, oh my goodness. I have to be specific about when it happens. I mean, for example, in Becoming Lily, because it starts in the 90s, I include the moment when Princess Diana is killed and they find out about the death of Princess Diana. Now, I remember how I found out. It was first thing in the morning. And I'd been out the night before with a group of friends and they'd stayed over. And I came downstairs next morning and everyone was huddled around the television, just in various stages of just ashen faced.
yeah.
And I remember I walked in and said, what's happened? And one of them turned to me and went, Diana's dead. And I didn't even have to say Diana who, I knew instantly. And I will always remember that moment. So I included that in the book. It's such a seminal moment where fiction and reality actually merged to create that moment. So I do research like that. I do. I mean, sometimes my browser history when I'm writing, I've got a romantic suspense series, the Blackwood Family Saga. And I remember when I was writing Sugar and Spice, my browser history would mark me as a person of interest to the people in authority because I was looking up,
Yes.
how far can a sniper rifle go? What kind of damage will a sniper bullet do if it hits the human body at this range? Sort of things like that I was looking up.
Depends
So
on the caliber of the show.
yeah, and is a burner phone a real thing? And what does it actually mean? And stuff like that. So I do research things that I want to get right. But this is probably why I will never ever write historical fiction.
Too much research.
Too much
Yeah. Right. No, it makes sense. The the two like my splatter western, because it takes place after the Civil War, I had to do research into what was going on right after the Civil War in those years, the 3 or 4 years after, and then research into Arizona, but also research into the weapons of the time. What were the weapons? What kind of ammunition? Mail routes, the Pony Express, and things like that. The different towns in the area. So just so that I had a background. And the same thing when I did my pulp. It was Haiti in the 1930s, so I had to go what was going on, and I learned a little bit of a history of that. And I was also learning about voodoo and zombies, and the Loa, which are the spirits. Because the full title is Death's Head, the Eye of Samedi, and Samedi, the King of the Dead, is a major character who kind of takes possession over Death's Head, the titular character. And I wanted to make sure I did the character right. I mean, Samedi is this is a god. This is a religion. I want to make sure I was being respectful of this, and doing that research was amazing. Just fun, because Samedi is quite a character. I mean, he's funny and he tells all these broad dirty jokes, and he's very like lustful and just like like a jokester, a prankster kind of character. Not, I won't say trickster, but he just enjoys you know making these jokes at everyone else's expense. And so doing all that research allowed me to bring these elements into the book where it doesn't seem like a history lesson, but it brings it in smoothly and accurately, because if someone who is a practitioner of Wudang, I want them to know
Yeah.
that this is accurate, it's
It's
respectful. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I like doing those little bits of research as well, because then I feel more confident going into it that I'm doing the right thing. This is
I don't
accurate
mind
to,
doing a little. I don't mind doing the little bit that's essential to get it
yeah,
accurate, get it
sure.
correct. But
Yeah.
I know some historical fiction writers, and they spend 2 or 3 years doing the research before they even pick up the pen to write a word. No, way too much.
Oh, well, like Frank Herbert researched Dune for 10 years. He was research because it's such a
That's what he said. He made it all up. So
well, he was researching. Have you ever read Dune?
yeah, of course, yes, loads of
Well,
times.
he was researching messiahs, and the whole thing about water being scarce on Dune was, it's an analogy. It's to oil on the earth. So he was researching energy needs. He was researching religion, messiahs, all kinds of things that he was doing research into, politics, geopolitics. So and he was also writing parts of the third and fourth books before he finished the first one. So he knew it was going to be this expansive kind of universe. But I thought, oh my God, 10 years of research. Of course, he didn't have access to things like we do now. I mean, it was so easy to go on our computer and bring the world to us in a flash, where he's having to go and scour libraries, physically probably go to the card catalog, take home books, physically read them, not pulling up a PDF from a library with a million sources. Like, I need things on Messiah, and and it just like boop comes to your computer. So yeah, well, that's amazing. Do you have a favorite time of day to write?
Morning. Has to be morning. My brains are porridge. Anytime after 5 o'clock, my brains have turned to porridge and they're leaking out of my ears. I can't think about creating new words.
No,
No,
I
that
get it.
has to be morning.
No,
And I can't do early morning when I see these authors saying, "Oh, I was up at 4 this morning to write." No, I would
yeah.
be so cross about being up at 4 o'clock. I would not be able to write a word other than the fact I am up early and I am cross. That would be all I could write.
Right. No, I totally get it. That's when I feel most creative, in the morning. I can start writing by like 9 o'clock. And then if I can write till about 1, usually and afterwards,
Depends how
yeah.
I'm going. If it's a good, if I've got no other interruptions and it's a good, I've got a head of steam up, then I can keep going till 3, 4. I mean, the most I ever did was 12,000 words in one day.
12. Oh my crap. Wow.
But I paid for that. I mean, I had repetitive strain injury and my hands were like claws next day. So and I had a pounding headache, and it was like I was drunk, and I had the worst hangover next day. I just felt so bad. So I've learned now to pace myself a little, because that really took it out of me. I just couldn't stop. I was reaching the end of the book and I just had to know what happened, so I couldn't stop.
That's just funny. Yeah, by the usually, because I know how it's going to end. Usually by about 3/4 of the way through the book, I'm done with it. Like, mentally, I'm like, I'm sick of this book. Uh, the last book, only because the villain came in, was so wonderful. That's what made it enjoyable. But usually, I've rehearsed the end in my head like 100 times. I'm like, oh, I know. I just have to tell my fingers to tell the story.
I don't know. I don't know how
I
it's
know,
going to
that's what's
end
right.
until it
That's what I
ends.
find so
So
joyous.
it
It's
is
like,
literally like the boulder rolling down the hill. I'm chasing after it, going, how? How is it going to end? What's going to happen? Is this going to happen? I don't know.
that's fantastic. Do you listen to music or anything, other kinds of distractions while you're writing?
I can't. I
Mhm.
can't listen to anything because it would just disrupt my thought processes.
Sure.
This is another reason why I couldn't write in a coffee shop, because I wouldn't get any
Oh,
writing done. I'd be
yeah.
too busy listening to the chat on the next door table, or watching the barista, or just watching people.
Yes,
I would just be so distracted.
I get that.
No, I have to have total silence, and I like to be on my own. That's when I write.
Yeah, I like being on my own. I like having a certain block of time set aside, but I need music. It depends on what I'm writing, but I can't have
Mm.
words. Words are distracting. I just need to
You
hear
should
music, whether it's
Carl.
Mozart.
Look up Carl Jenkins, because that would be perfect for you, because there's no words.
Well, I have a lot of like um like Mozart and Beethoven, but a lot of like 1930s music with vibraphone. Lionel Hampton is a vibraphone player from the 1930s, and I love his music. It depends on the genre I'm writing. I have a lot of soundtracks, like from the movie Alien and Ravenous, and things like that, that help me kind of get into a nice place where I can write, but no distractions. But I'll definitely check him out. Got some
Yeah,
like nice jazz, guitar jazz, things like that, which help just kind of it gives part of my brain something to do and allows the creative part of me to kind of like let out. It's like when I used to play drums, and I would always have a piece of gum in my mouth because I needed to have a piece of gum in my mouth because it like allowed my body just to like focus on that and let everything else just kind of happen organically, because the drums felt like an extension of my body. So if I just it just kind of was a necessary distraction so that I can do everything else I needed to do. I don't know how my brain works that way. It's just kind of funny. Just a few more questions, and we'll
okay.
we'll get out of here. Tell me how you felt seeing your book in print for the first time.
Almost the same way I did when I met my daughter when she was born. Almost the same way. That feeling that I did this, vindication that at last, after so many years of trying, I was published. Just, I do remember as well that I was a little bit disappointed in the cover and the quality of the book, because I didn't feel the small press had really got the essence of the book. And this was another thing that was said in reviews over and over again of my first book, The Book of Eve. The cover does not reflect the story inside, was a common theme that was said so many reviews. And of course, I've now been able to sort that out. But and it's a feeling that never gets old. I mean, holding
Yeah, your brand new one right there. Yeah.
your book in your hand for the first time, and you just look at it and you think, I mean, because that's a serious chunk of a book.
Yes.
You
Thick.
think, all of these words came from here. How do I do it? And it never gets old, that feeling, that just feeling of intense satisfaction, that feeling that you've achieved something that will live long after you, hopefully,
Yeah,
and that
that
will
people still might want to
hopefully,
read. Right.
yeah, yeah, hopefully that will make other people want to read it. And it just makes it all worthwhile, makes it worth all the long hours of pounding away at the laptop, and all the editing and all the formatting and the proofreading and everything. It just makes it all
Mhm.
worth it. So yeah, it's very joyful. It's a very joyful feeling.
Yeah. No, I get it. And it sometimes it helps you kind of redefines how you think of yourself as a
Mm.
writer versus whatever. Like this is something else that I've done. I've gone through things where at times I was a musician and I did this, and I made movies, and now I'm writing books, and these are all kind of adding to the totality of my creative
Yeah.
efforts. Physical. Here's a manifestation of what I have done. Here's an album or cassette or whatever, and here's a movie. So I know I get that. Have you ever read your own work a year or more after you had published it? Like gone
Oh,
back to reread your books?
constantly. I'm always fiddling with my books. Every time I'm going to have a new book come out, and my formatter, what we like to do is we put other books I've written at the back of my book. So we're constantly updating the books to include later books, put them in
Okay.
there. And so I always look upon that as an opportunity to have another read through. And I'll read through and think, oh, there's a comma there. I don't like that comma there. Let's move it. So I'm always fiddling. I'm always reading my books. That I don't think I'll ever reach a point where I go, I'm done.
Okay.
No more.
Yeah. I get it. Did it feel weird? Like you're looking at it objectively, trying to fiddle with it, as you say. But was it a weird experience? Like, oh, I don't remember writing that or anything like
Sometimes,
that? Yeah.
yes, sometimes. So especially if I go back to a book that I haven't read for a while, and I get quite caught up in it, and I'll sit there thinking, oh, this is actually not bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not half bad at this. This is, and then other times I'll read a line and I'll go, oh, okay. What was I thinking?
Yeah. I hadn't done that with my books because you've read them, because by the time it's ready to go print, you've read it enough times. Um, but when I started working on the second of my cozy series, it had been a couple years between my first one because I'd written three other books, and So I had to reread it, and I was like kind of dreading it, like, oh boy, I'm waiting for the cringe. I'm waiting for like, Mark, what the hell are you thinking? But like you said, it wasn't that bad. There were a couple things where I thought, oh, this is a little schmaltzy. I would cut this, I would change this. My editor, my brain was kicking in, but I was more pleasantly surprised than not. Like, oh, this is actually written. This part's pretty good. Um, but it was more like I don't remember writing this. Like, how did these words come out of me? Because I don't. I mean, I know I was there. My hands were doing the work, but I don't remember these moments and all these things that I had put together in the moment. And now that I look at it a couple years later, I'm like, wow, I'm surprised that all this came out of me. Yeah.
But I once saw a quote on a picture, and there was a lovely quote, and I said, "Oh, that's great. Who wrote that?" And the Instagrammer went, "You did."
Oh, well, look at me.
Oh,
Look how
okay.
good I am. Apparently, I'll take that. That's great. Um, if you had to think of something like, what is your writer fantasy? Like, I mean, you've published quite a lot. You've done a dozen books, different genres. But do you have an ultimate fantasy? Like, yeah, if I had a perfect fantasy for my writing, it's going to be this.
Um, so what do you mean, a book I want to write, or where I
Well,
see going
anything
my
as a
writing
writer
career?
fantasy. Well, I mean, like as a
I would
writer,
like to
we
write
all
full
have things.
time.
Okay.
I would like to write full time, but then I think that's a common fantasy held by all us poor indie authors who have to go out and slog a normal job just to pay the pennies, just to pay the editor. Um, I would love to open a writers retreat. I would absolutely love that. I would love to have the money to buy a big rambling house with a lovely big garden, really eclectic and quirky, and just kind of make every nook and cranny of it a perfect place to write, and then just have like-minded people come who just want to get away and just come and write, and they can just go and do writing during the day, and then in the evening come down and congregate and open a bottle of wine, and we all cook dinner together, and then sit and just brainstorm what you've written during the day and just talk about it, and just like pass around the port and the coffee, and just people going, that what you've done is brilliant, but what about this for an idea? And just I just think that would just be so fabulous. I would absolutely love to do that.
Yeah, that sounds delightful. And then my mind was going like, oh, and then the murder happens, then the
Oh,
mystery,
stop it.
Well, no, not in the real world. No, it was thinking like this would be a perfect setting for like a mystery, like writers all getting together. I've seen mysteries with like a mystery writer as the main character, but not a congregation of them all at a writer's retreat. But no, I love that idea. I think
Oh,
that,
I can see ideas. I can see a germ of an idea sparking in your head there.
yeah, I'm not going to write it. You can have it. I've got 10 books on the horizon that are like begging me to finish the one I'm at now. So, but no, that the idea of that, because I was imagining, as you were describing it, I was imagining the garden, the flowers. I was imagining my own little nook of where I would want to write, and just that environment of the very kind of familial and supportive kind of environment that writers can give one another. Because if you, especially when you trust one another to give good criticism, and not just try to tear each other down, which has been so easy on social media to do. It's just so easy. And that's
What
just
is
why,
true face to face?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I love so much about being on Instagram, is I have found such a supportive writing community. No matter what genre, that people are happy to share your posts and like them. I've had other writers like buy my books. I'm like, that's just amazing. And then they actually read them and they write about them. Like, oh, that's more than I appreciate that so much. So no, I love that idea. And maybe perhaps one day, if it happens,
Someday.
you'll get a visit from a Yank who will show up one day and said, let's write.
You'll
Um,
get it, mate. You'll get mates rates, I promise.
Excellent. Yeah. And I'm a good cook, so
Oh,
I'll be happy to cook. Yeah. Okay, just a few more. What advice would you give for anyone who wants to write?
just right. Stop overthinking it. Stop thinking that you have to fill the dozen notebooks with plans or plots. Stop thinking you have to have read every single how-to book out there. Just stop thinking you need matching stationery and pens with sparkly tops. Just sit down and write. And it doesn't matter what you write, just write. You know, don't listen to all the rules, because the rules then are made to be broken. I mean, things like you must write every single day or you're not a proper writer. Yeah.
Because
Just write when you
real
can.
life comes in and kicks us right in the balls. We don't always have that luxury.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you're working full time and raising a family, you do not have the luxury of locking yourself away and writing down
Yeah,
1,000 words every
yeah.
day. It just doesn't happen. And
I
if those
saw
words are forced, then they're not going to be very good words.
right, and even there are days where you write and you know what you're writing, it's not going to be good enough. It's not going to be good or fit into the story, but you write it out anyway because you kind of need to get it out of the way. It's like a block. Let's just write it out, and you can always cannibalize it. I can use this for something else, or it just look at it. Okay, it didn't work today, and that's
Yeah.
okay. Not every day is going to be a good day. Um,
Yeah.
I remember reading. There's a book club group that I'm in on Facebook, like 20 books to 50K, and it has this thing: you write 20 books, and they sell a certain amount of books each time, and then you're going to have $50,000 a year. I'm like, good luck with that.
No.
But yeah, it's not going to happen. Right. But a lot of these people are writing to audience. Like I picked a genre that sells. I know the tropes. I'm going to write something that everyone's going to like. I'm like, that's so soulless. I mean, I know you want to make a living making it right, but I'd rather write something that makes me happy. And like, yeah, when I lay down and I like, yeah, Gage Black, it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea because it's fucking dark. But that's my favorite book because this was first time I felt completely free as a writer, like utterly free. I could do whatever I want. And that's why this book is always going to be my favorite in a way because of that emotional connection. So, but no,
Yeah, right from the heart.
right
Right
from your
from the
heart.
heart
Yeah.
and right from your gut as well. And forget trends and
Yeah.
market, and because
Yeah.
that would just feel artificial.
Hmm.
And I think some of the most outstanding books out there are not the books that were written to market. They are the one-offs. They are the ones that
Yeah.
came out of left side and just took
Here's a
over.
writer just being honest with him or
Yeah.
herself and just telling his or her story. Um, but in this group, someone was posting this big thing about how to make a living writing full time. I'm like, well, let's just see what this person has to say. Making a living and being able to write full time and not working. Let's do that. Well, the first thing she says was, "Well, my husband makes enough money so that I don't have to work." I'm like, "Well, fuck that." I just stopped reading. I'm like, "Well, no wonder you can write full time. You don't have to work, and we don't have kids to take care of." I go, "Well, then you got a
Yeah.
tree. You're on vacation. You're on
Yeah.
paid vacation. No wonder, of course, you can write all the time." Don't. And I stopped writing. I almost wrote to her. I go, "How dare you?
I
How
know.
dare
I do
you
see a
give this
lot of that. I
advice?"
do see a
Well, I
lot of
won the
that.
lottery, so here's how not to work. You just win the lottery. Of course you don't have to work. Jesus,
But I say this a lot too. Sometimes I see young newbie authors on Instagram and social media, and they're a little crushed because someone a little further along the road has said, "Oh, well, if you're not writing every day and you're not doing this, then you're not right. You're not a proper writer. You're not doing this." And I will actually reach out and message them privately and say, "Just don't listen. Do not listen to them because they're talking out their arse, quite frankly.
sure.
You write what you want to write, because so long as you love what you're writing, then other people will love it too."
Right.
And everybody is in a different stage of the journey, and everybody has got different burdens and responsibilities. And I know your situation. You are a single parent raising 3 kids and you're holding down 2 jobs. The fact you write at all
Yeah.
deserves a medal.
Yes.
So you just ignore them all, and when you have a first draft, I'll look it over for you.
Yeah.
Just keep going.
That's great.
And I have
Yeah.
had 1 or 2 come back to me and said that actually just made me stop throwing the towel in. And I just thought, why am I even trying? They said, but you were so nice to me that, and I think, well, yeah, because I had people who were really nice to me when I first started out.
Sure.
I had a great group of writers who actually reached out to me and said, "Look, sweetie, you may want to not actually do it this way. You may want to think about doing it this way." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Now you've told me this way. It's obvious."
Right.
And they were just so nice to me. So now I'm just trying to pay it back a little bit. If I can just help one or two people. I would also say, on your theme of giving advice to new writers, grow a thick skin. You're going to need it.
Yes. Right. Exactly. And I guess I was fortunate to have a little of that skin grow. I have an undergraduate degree, a BFA in creative writing. So you go through all these workshops and you get all that used to criticism. Um, you just get used to it. And most of the time it comes from a good place. And then you can also tell where some writers are just cocky or who just have a personal agenda against you. But I like living a life by a simple mantra, like, we're born with two middle fingers because otherwise we'd just wear the one out. You know, I don't care who doesn't like my stuff. That's great if you'd like it. If not, go do your own thing. Like, great, you want to make a movie that's better than mine? Fantastic. I'll you go fly that flag and see who salutes it. You know, at the end of the day, I'm doing this for me. I got to make myself happy. And if
Mm.
you're not in it, and I agree with you, any writer, if you're not in a good mental health place and you can't write, or you're just taking care of a family, real world comes in, you just don't have the luxury, you know,
Yeah.
of writing. And I was halfway through my draft when I started the graduate program, and like all my effort is going to, I got this graduate program is too important. This is my new job going to be in a few months. I'm going to be technical writing. Like, this is what I'm going to do. I don't have time to write my novel every day, and that's okay. I will finish it because I got 8 more books clamoring to be written. But now it's just finding the balance. I've got schoolwork, I've got a job, I've got other responsibilities. I'm doing 3 podcasts. So there are other things in my life right now. And the book just is sitting, you know, it'll come back. Oh, I get that. Last question, Julia. Where can we find your books?
Oh, Amazon. I'm on Amazon. Or you can go to my website, which is www.juliablakeauthor.co.uk. I have a really nice website. I'm very proud of my website. It's got a page per book, and it has video trailers and synopsis and lovely images on there, and all about me. So that's a good place to go and look if you're curious to see which of my books you think you might want to try on for size. And then there are purchase links that will take you direct to the listing on Amazon. So, and I do write in, as we've already established, quite a few different genres. So if you're not keen on one, there'll probably be something else that you like. So there.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being on today. I have had a true joy getting to know you and hearing about your process and learning about you as a person, as a writer. And I just really appreciate that you take the time to be on the show with me. Thank you.
Oh, no, thank you. Thank you for asking me. It's been great. I've loved it. Thank you.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Well, I'm going to do my commercial and then we'll get out of here. You've been watching and listening to Between the Lines. You can find us at unsaneradio.com. Listen to full episodes or download to your device. You can watch us on our YouTube page, which is, if you're watching, that's where you're at. Between the Lines podcast. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And if you know someone who would like our show, tell them about us. And if you're a writer who would like to come and have a chat with me, email me at betweenthelines54@yahoo.com. That's betweenthelines54@yahoo.com. And here's my cheesy outro line, Julia. See you next time, Between the Lines. Oh, right? I know.